with both sides claiming victory. We'll discuss the latest developments and more in today's top headlines. I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We'll also talk with Dan Anthony, the executive director of We Pay the Tariffs, who will discuss where we are now after a year of President Trump's tariffs.
Plus, we'll also chat with Kelly Denice Taylor, the actress playing Jane Seymour in the national tour of Broadway's hit musical, Six. She'll tell us all about what it's like playing at the Hobby Center.
And as always, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. President Trump reached an 11th-hour ceasefire deal with Iran. It came less than 2 hours before he warned he would wipe out Iran's whole civilization. NPR's Franco Ordonez reports Trump says the 2 weeks will allow for a long-term agreement to be finalized.
The president posted on social media that he had agreed to a 2-week ceasefire with Iran on the condition Iran agrees to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, essentially backing down from his alarming threats. The president is meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, where the ceasefire is expected to be a big part of the discussions. Trump later posted that the ceasefire announcement marked a big day for world peace and wrote that Iran can now start the rebuilding process, but that the U.S. military will be, quote, just hanging out to enforce the deal. Franco Ordonez, NPR News.
Meanwhile, Suzanne Maloney is a former State Department advisor and is now vice president for foreign policy at the Brookings Institution, a centrist think tank. She has more on what's on the table for the upcoming talks that are expected to start on Friday.
If they can maintain the regime and maintain at least some ability to monetize control of the Strait of Hormuz as a means of trying to improve their economic condition, then they may be prepared to compromise on that. You know, the other questions are about whether they will accept the U.S. demands to cease all enrichment, to impose limits on the missile program, to end the support for its proxies in the region.
Speaking there to NPR's Morning Edition. The Justice Department says former Attorney General Pam Bondi, recently ousted from her job by President Trump, won't appear for a deposition over the Epstein files since she no longer works for the department. The Trump administration is acknowledging U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement used spyware to intercept encrypted messages as part of its efforts to disrupt trafficking of fentanyl. NPR's Jude Joffe-Block reports last year the administration revived the contract between ICE and Paragon Solutions, which created the spyware tool known as graphite.
ICE's acting director, Todd Lyons, described for the first time his agency's use of spyware in a letter last week to Democratic House members. It was a response to questions the lawmakers had sent 6 months ago. Lyons said he greenlit ICE's use of tools to address challenges posed by transnational criminal groups and fentanyl traffickers using encrypted communications. Privacy and civil liberties advocates say there are not sufficient regulations and transparency protocols to ensure ICE does not abuse spyware. Foreign governments have used graphite in the past to target journalists and activists and access their encrypted messages. Jude Joffe-Block, NPR News.
On Wall Street, the Dow is up 1,260 points, the Nasdaq up 650. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. NASA leaders are already calling the Artemis 2 mission a success, though they've now got their eyes on getting the astronauts home. News 88.7's Michael Atkinson has the latest from the Johnson Space Center.
The 4 astronauts aboard the Orion spacecraft collected an estimated 175 gigabytes worth of images from their lunar flyby on Monday. NASA began distributing those images Tuesday morning, showing a remarkable view of the rugged lunar terrain and its juxtaposition with the Earth. Now, NASA officials are already looking ahead to future missions. Here's Flight Director Rick Henfling.
The things that we're going to have to improve upon for Artemis 3 are relatively small and incremental in nature, as opposed to wholesale redesigns of spacecraft subsystems.
Today, the Artemis 2 crew will perform some more tests of the Orion spacecraft, like radiation shielding and manual piloting. They're expected to hold a press conference from space later this evening. I'm Michael Atkinson, News 88.7.
Harris County has joined a legal effort against the state comptroller. The state comptroller's office announced in December that it's dismantling a program that aims to give certain economically disadvantaged businesses a fair bidding opportunity in government contracts. The program benefiting women and minority-owned businesses would be dissolved. It's being retooled to accommodate small businesses owned by service-disabled veterans. Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis called that move unlawful.
In this affordability crisis, we should do everything we can to support small businesses, not limit their opportunities.
The lawsuit, filed in part by Houston business owners, aims to reverse the state comptroller's decision. The Houston City Council has approved a measure intended to curtail coordination between the police department and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. In a 12-5 vote, the council prohibited officers from prolonging traffic stops to wait for ICE to respond to civil immigration warrants. The change comes after Houston police leadership revealed officers turned 85 people over to ICE last year. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, celebrating a century of supporting efforts to promote a just, equitable, and sustainable society. More at mott.org/100.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now your hosts for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
Hello there, Houston.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Ernie. How are you?
I feel really tired. I had one of those nights of sleep where it's like you're constantly asleep in a deep sleep, but then you wake up,
Yes.
and then you're back and you wake up, and all night long it was one of those nights where every time I got up, I looked at the clock, and it was like 1:30, 2:15, 3:05, and I'm like, is this night ever going to end?
You know, I know we touched on this a little bit yesterday, but I do think that our bodies are not meant to consume so much during the day. We have activities, the information that's coming out, caffeine. You know,
like
we're just
40-ounce mug of it.
I think we're always overstimulated just as a society, and so finding that rest and really being able to get restoration.
Yeah.
It's hard to get. It's hard to find that.
And they often talk about, you need sleep to get your mind set straight.
Yes.
To be able to logically think things through. And I find when I've had less sleep, things don't connect as well as they should. And I look all the way up to here we go, I'm going into politics already. I look at our president and his bizarre sleep pattern, because tweets come out at all times of the night, days start later or earlier or this and that. I don't know what's going on there. I would be a mess.
We are always being pinged. Our attention is always being grabbed into other areas. I actually received an email this morning that April is Stress Awareness Month. And there's no obviously shortage of stress going around, but a recent data or survey showed that there is an 88% increase of people feeling financial stress, just alone financial stress, while 48% or more stressed than last year. So we're talking about, information overload, but there's also the financial stress that people are feeling. I think that there's a lot of uncertainty. We're just in an odd time.
Well, we're going to get into that on today's show. We're going to be talking with the executive director of We Pay the Tariffs about that impact on our economy and what's going on there and what that means for us. We're also going to be looking at the immigration situation. Houston Galveston has an organization together that's looking at providing legal aid for immigrants and helping them navigate that. I can't even imagine that kind of stress in today's environment that they're going through. And then some hope and happiness in all of this, of course, Camp for All. And that's a wonderful story of joy.
Yes, it's an awesome camp. It's out, I think, in Burton, Texas, and we're going to learn more about it. But it basically is a camp that's focused for people with disabilities or chronic illness to see what they can do. Yeah. And they break down those barriers and they say, this is what you can do. We're not going to focus on what you can't. So I'm excited about that conversation.
And talking about stress, I can't think of 6 women who had more stress than the 6 wives of Henry VIII. The musical Six is in town, and the actress who plays Jane Seymour, not the TV actress, but the third wife of Henry VIII, she'll be joining us to tell us all about that hit Broadway musical. So there's a whole lot to come on today's show, not just the fact that we're tired and stressed.
No, but we're also happy to be here, and it's beautiful outside.
Are you going to give me weather?
It is partly cloudy with a high of 81 and a low of 62. So that is a wonderful spring day in Texas.
I even stress in the mornings getting up when it's like, what's the weather? And they're like, it is 61 degrees. I'm like, okay, how am I going to? And then it says, and hi, today will be 87. I'm like, what do I wear?
Layer, Ernie. That's what you have to do.
And the date is April 8th, as you mentioned.
Yes, 2026.
2026. It's still this year. So anyway, with all of that said and out of the way, remember, we invite you to join us on all the topics we talk about today. If you're stressed, if you're tired, you can call us in, or you can react to the headlines, which Celeste is going to share with you now.
The U.S. and Iran reached a ceasefire deal on Tuesday, less than 2 hours before the deadline President Trump imposed for Iran to meet his demands or else face wide-scale destruction. President Trump hailed the agreement early Wednesday as a big day for world peace. Iran wants it to happen. They've had enough. Likewise, so has everyone else, Trump posted on social media. The president said the U.S. will be helping with the traffic buildup in the Strait of Hormuz and that Iran can start the reconstruction process. As part of the agreement set to take effect immediately, Trump said the U.S. and Israel would suspend bombing Iran for 2 weeks, subject to Iran following through on its commitment to reopen the Strait of Hormuz for safe passage during the ceasefire period. A strategic waterway through which about 20% of the world's oil supplies passes. Oil prices plunged and stocks surged at the announcement of a pause in fighting, with Brent crude oil dropping to $94.74, or by over 13%. Now is the time to join us on Hello Houston. What do you think of these latest developments? You can call or text 713-440-8870.
So much to unpack there. I will say I 100% agree with the president when he says they've had enough and so has everyone else. I think we've all had enough.
Yes.
Then I start to diverge from a lot of what's being said and what's happening. It's a big day for world peace, he says. Did we see relaxing some of the tensions? Possibly.
And it was the ceasefire was critical, right? We needed to see that at least there was some cooling of the extreme tension that was rising. But to your point, this feels much less of a peace deal and more of a test to whether both sides are willing or even able to step back.
And folks, call in. Let me know what you think about this, because from where I sit, it feels like a child breaks a vase and then says, look, Mom, I glued it back together. And you say, oh, good for you. You fixed that. Well, it didn't have to be broken in the first place. And I know that there are tensions with Iran, and I know that was a very difficult regime. And to many degrees, it still is, that the leadership may have changed, but it's still the same party. It's still the same initiatives going on there. So I don't know what we achieved in that regard. The Straits of Hormuz seems like it was open and available to all the world to use. Now, even with this 2-week ceasefire, there's a fee on it, and that Iran now seems more in control of that piece of waterway than they were before. So did we fix something, or did we make things more complicated? And the rhetoric talking about, you mentioned the tension rising and we needed to release that. What caused that tension to rise? Was it what the president's missives were saying? Did he artificially inflate the situation? I'm curious what other people think. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm making a note because you said, did we make things more complex? And I would say, or complicated. And I think that sometimes there is a thought process of thinking sometimes you have to make things more complicated in order to get to a real place of, productivity, if that makes sense. And, the other part of this is, to your point, I think that there are still a lot of details and a lot of questions that remain. And we have not gotten independent confirmation from Iranian officials or third parties that this is real, happening.
CNN was reporting a 10-point plan that they said Iran had forwarded, which is what led the president to make his missive last night. And then I'm assuming, if I'm following the story correctly, the president then said that CNN's reporting was inaccurate and false, but CNN stands behind their reporting, and that the 10-point plan was all very pro-Iran, taking control of the straits, of limiting all of this stuff. And so it didn't look like a deal that the U.S. would have been excited about.
Right. And so exactly what did then Iran agree to?
Right.
And, what is the president publicly willing to acknowledge? I think that there's other, what happens, what's going to happen if either side violates these terms within the next 2 weeks.
But again, what even are the terms? And I think we've talked about this a lot on the show. I definitely have issues with it, is that when you cannot trust what the administration says, when you can't be 100% sure that what they're saying is not grandiose statements, slanted truths, downright lies, recharacterizations of things. If you can't trust in what they're saying, in a moment like this, how do you know what's really going on? Yeah. That's where I have a lot of issue.
Right. And it's interesting also because the president really is portraying this as just a major diplomatic breakthrough and victory and win. But we still have to wait. It still remains if they are going to if this will hold beyond the 2-week window.
So what
a lot
do you
of questions.
713-440-8870. My other issue with all of this, or more of the same issue with all of it, is we knew that at least I believe the president was going to find an off-ramp somewhere. So that the comments he made yesterday morning, which seems like a lifetime ago, ramped everything up so high and said very specific things that Iran had to do, which they didn't seem to do. Fully open the strait again. As I understand, the straits are open. Slowly ships are starting to move through, but there is still the idea that there is a fee for a ship to come through there that is being paid to Oman or Iran, if I understand it correctly. So I don't believe that we got what he had said had to happen for him not to wipe out their civilization, but simply that terminology, too much.
And, I would love to think that there are these really broader negotiations that are happening, and this is just the start of that. Or I worry that this is just simply a tactical pause.
Yeah.
And that's the crux where I'm looking at, we're using words like, diplomacy and win, but really in the reality of it, where do we actually stand? What do we know? And what facts are out there?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And the terminology that was used by the president cut deep into a lot of the Middle East.
Yes.
And so are Iranians going to forget this idea? Are other countries near it going to forget the idea of he was at least saying, whether he was willing to truly do it or not, to wipe off a civilization off the face of the earth? That's some serious stuff.
Right.
And that will be remembered long after a 2-week ceasefire.
Right. And at the end of the day, there are thousands of Iranian people that are kind of at the center, at the middle of this. And I go back to what our caller said yesterday, where he was saying originally, yes, the Iranian people felt like there was going to be some type of reprieve, but they wanted it to be within their own plan, within their own society, in their way. And this feels like it's gone beyond that.
Resin writes on YouTube, one of our YouTubers, I've had a few thousand hours of conflict resolution training. The comments made by the president are not going to be forgotten by Iran. Simply 2 weeks of reorganize. It's 2 weeks to reorganize. And yeah, some people are saying this gives Iran 2 weeks to get their ducks back in a row for the ongoing battle that is going to happen. And others have said we have depleted a huge amount of our missiles and weaponry that we need for protection. And does this give us enough time to replenish? Probably not. But how much are we expending there? Right.
And again, I think that this is something. There might be people like, why do we continue to look at this? And it's like, what the crux of all of it is the Strait of Hormuz handles about 20% of all global oil supply. Yeah. And that is basically, we will see that at gas prices, inflation. There will be an economic ripple that we will feel.
Some are saying even if things get resolved, it could be up to a year before gas prices truly come back down. It's funny, we got such an inflated price of gas that now that it's dropped to 94 and 74 cents, we say, yay, look at what we've done. But it wasn't there where we started. It's still inflated. 713-440-8870. Mohammed is on the line from South Houston. Mohammed, what's on your mind?
Hey, good morning, everybody. I have a comment and a question. The comment, I agree with you guys. Things got worse and more complicated than what it used to be before the war. For example, all these ships and boats, they were sailing free without paying any fee. Now Iran wants to charge them $200,000 per each ship every day. So
all the way up to, I've heard, $2 million.
That's all. Yep, and it will cost us more things. And my question is, if a small country like Iran, who was abandoned for all these years, could cause all these headache and troubles to U.S. At the other side of the world, God forbid if something big happens with North Korea, Russia, some other big superpowers, what we will be suffering from. Thank you so much.
Mohammed, thank you for that. There was reporting, too, that Russia and China have both been working with Iran, both in supplying things, helping them with tactical information, and also in return, they were getting more free passage through the straits. So, what have we accomplished at this point in this? Was there a different way, a more diplomatic way to go about this? Or, as the president says, so many years people have waffled on this or pushed these things down the road and not had a resolution to the problem. And so it took a man like him to move in there and make things happen. I don't know. Sometimes breaking everything in the China shop doesn't work.
Right. And we have been receiving a few YouTube comments. Resin8 says, I've had a few thousand. Did you read that already?
Yeah, I already read that. Give me Earl Grey tea.
Says gas prices are never going to come down now. After this, quote, deal, we're going to be the ones paying for the toll tax for ships going through there.
Yeah. I think all too often, and I'm sure our administration thinks this way, but the thing is you always have to remember the ripple effects of every move, the tentacles that reach out from every decision and what it affects and impacts. Right now, farmers are heavily impacted by this, not necessarily because of the oil prices, which that is going to be a problem, but fertilizer. And this is the time of the year when they need fertilizer to begin planting for the summer. So is that going to impact food source? And then what's going to happen to us in the grocery store is those prices are going to have to go up because the limit's going to be small. There are these ripples that build on beyond. So when you sit here and you think, why are they talking again about what's going on in the Middle East? Because it's going to affect you right here in Houston in the grocery store in days to come. It's affecting you at the pumps. These are our local stories and the huge Iranian community that we have right here in Houston that are also our friends and neighbors and we care for and love.
Absolutely. And coming up on Hello Houston, it has been a year of Trump's tariffs. And Dan Anthony, the executive director of We Pay the Tariffs, will discuss where we are today. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
Meet Tio Choco. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. This is his story. Visit ridemetro.org/Choco to find out where is Choco.
Your support to keep that going. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Can't get enough PBS programming? PBS Passport is an added member benefit that offers exclusive streaming access to many of your favorite programs on the PBS app. Whether you're an NPR listener, a PBS watcher, or both, your ongoing donations of at least $5 per month qualify for PBS Passport. Make your gift now to start watching at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Support comes from Theater Under the Stars, presenting Beautiful, the Carole King story. You've got a friend that will have you singing along with this all-new production. On stage at the Hobby Center May 19th through 31st. Tickets available at tuts.org.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, it's part 2 of the documentary Our New World. As climate change reshapes the Earth, the film reveals nature's astonishing adaptation abilities. Tonight at 9 on TV8.
Support comes from Woodlands Waterway Arts Festival. Over 200 artists, authors, music, food, and family activities at the Woodlands Waterway. April 10th through 12th. Open for kids 12 and under. Tickets at thewoodlandsartscouncil.org, where dreams take shape.
Join us for Hello Houston, weekdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., taking a deep dive into the stories that matter to Houstonians, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained, with a generous support from our founding sponsor, John Bradshaw.
Support comes from the Dan L. Duncan Comprehensive Cancer Center at Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center, offering comprehensive cancer care that is compassionate, personalized, and driven by clinical research. More at stlukeshealth.org/cancer.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
1 year after President Trump imposed sweeping tariffs on U.S. trading partners, small businesses, including right here in Texas, say they're still feeling the impact, despite a ruling from the Supreme Court calling those tariffs illegal. Many companies are still waiting for relief, while new tariffs may be on the horizon. And today we're joined by Dan Anthony, the executive director of We Pay the Tariffs, to talk about what the past year has meant for small businesses and what comes next. Dan, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, I guess the name of your group right there lays it out, but let me just ask to remind people and to help them understand, how are tariffs paid?
Yeah, I don't think you really win with subtlety. And so when we started looking at elevating the voices of the small businesses that we're working with, we wanted it to be very clear-cut. When a foreign product hits the U.S. shores, before the U.S. company can take possession of it, they have to pay the tariff to the U.S. government, whatever rate that's at. And so we're working exclusively with U.S. small businesses who have paid those costs, either directly because they are the importer of record, or indirectly because they're buying from other companies, suppliers who pay those tariffs on as the product crossed the border.
Can the argument be made that those then selling products to the U.S. would have to, they see a decrease in the market share because people aren't buying their products, because when they get here, the tariff makes it more expensive, so that they would then sell the products to the U.S. at a lower rate, and then that would make up with the tariff price so that they can still move as much product through our marketplace. I think some people think that could help. Again, once again, it's the U.S. market paying the tariffs, but that the pricing could come down in that way, and then that would affect the outside country that's selling product into this country. Is that a flawed philosophy?
It's theoretically possible. In practice, it hasn't really worked out that way. And so you've seen research that's shown about 96% of the costs are borne on the U.S. side. So that would imply that 4% is paid by those foreign producers through lowering of prices. But the vast majority is happening on the U.S. side. It's companies that are paying when they bring it in. Their suppliers are not lowering prices. The U.S. government actually publishes data on import prices. So if what you're suggesting was actually occurring and there was a 25% tariff, you would expect to see that import price drop from $1 to 80 cents.
Right.
At the end of the day, it would all net out and you wouldn't have a change in U.S. price, but the data doesn't show that. And so there's a lot of research. There's been a lot of research historically on tariffs going back to the first Trump administration. But I think what it really comes down to is when you tariff everyone, those foreign producers don't have that incentive. If you really isolate tariffs on one product or one sector and one producer, yes, they may need to do that in order to maintain market share. When you do it on everyone, well, there's less ability to jump to someone else who's now more cost effective. And so I think that's why in this specific case, you're seeing very, very high rates of burden on the U.S. side.
And, you're talking about very high rates of burden on the U.S. side, and that feels broad-stroked because when we talk about the burden, I want to talk specifically about the burden on small businesses because the conversation has been very high level. Oftentimes this entire year, we'll have to wait and see. Here we are, 1 year in, and what type of real-world impact have we seen of these tariffs, but specifically on small businesses?
Yeah, I think everything is just harder for the small business. You don't have large teams to manage this. Something that we've heard from small business owners across the country is, it's really hard to run a business when you wake up and have to check social media to see what sort of taxes you're paying that day. It's the type of thing that would be wholly unacceptable if your property taxes changed day to day and you didn't know what it would be. And it was just sort of, what day is the payment due? Okay, well, my rate doubled. Those are the types of challenges that I think are sort of unique here. Mm-hmm. But just in terms of not having that money, if I'm bringing in a product, I need to pay the government when I get the product. I might keep it in a warehouse for a month and sell it to a customer who's going to pay me several months later. So you've got something that's really impacted small businesses, this sort of bridge period between when you have to pay the tariff and when you might actually get paid for that sale. So access to capital is really, really challenging for small businesses in particular. And what that means is that money's got to come from somewhere. So maybe you're bringing in less product. We've talked to a lot of companies who have just stopped bringing in product at all. They said, we're not going to do it. We're going to wait it out. But what that means is they're paying no tariffs. But they'll end up paying in terms of lower sales next year.
And so even after the Supreme Court ruled the tariffs were illegal, why are these businesses still waiting for relief? And where are we at within that space?
Sure. So the Supreme Court said that the tariffs were illegal, but didn't address the idea of refunds when they, whether they were even needed for everyone, how the process would be. And so you've now got a separate process working with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, who would need to actually process these refunds, in the Court of International Trade. And so that ruling came February 20th. We still don't have real clarity on exactly what sort of information importers will need to provide, what timelines for refunds will look like. This is being worked out through the courts. And so everyone's anxiously awaiting the details on what this will actually take and how long it'll take for that money to come back.
Outside of the refunds themselves, once the Supreme Court ruling came down, did that then remove the tariffs, or are the tariffs still in place no matter what the Supreme Court said? My voice cracked on
so
that one.
the Supreme Court found that one set of tariffs was illegal, and then a separate authority was used by the president to impose other new tariffs, within a minute of the first set expiring. And so one set of tariffs has ended, a new set of tariffs has replaced it. For many countries, it's a lower rate. So it is, they're still there, but they're not quite as bad. For other countries, if you're importing from the EU, for example, or the UK, there's a decent chance you're paying more today than you were on February 1. And then, further confusion here. The administration has launched a number of new trade reviews that could lead to tariffs, as soon as this summer. And so there's this constant uncertainty.
I just want to remind everyone we're talking with Dan Anthony, who's the executive director of We Pay the Tariffs. If you would like to chat with him or ask a question, 713-440-8870. Is it safe to say, though, we're basically kind of playing a shell game with the money in the U.S. So the government may say we have acquired this much money because of tariffs, but that's just more money from us, the American citizens, and all the money is staying in our ecosystem.
Yeah, and it's really money that can't be used for other things. You can't use it for hiring. You can't use it for expansion. It's this direct tax. I mean, if the U.S. government said we want to tax small business owners tens or hundreds of billions of dollars, I think there would be an uproar about that. But this idea that you can do it because it's only on foreign products seems to change that narrative a bit. And so I think what we're trying to show is it's really the exact same impacts, the exact same outcomes. And I think something that we hear a lot that gets missed is so many of these companies are small manufacturers.
Mm-hmm.
So they are trying to produce in the U.S. They are trying to create local manufacturing jobs, but all the components, the electronics that they're using to make something in the U.S. Are coming from overseas. And so they're now less competitive, and they're not able to manufacture, which is ostensibly the goal of these.
Which is so interesting, right? Because the president has said he's trying to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. And, he wants this to being items being made here. So how does that factor into this?
It's really just, that gets to the root of the problem. It's really difficult to say we are going to build an ecosystem where everything is available instantaneously.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not feasible. And so this approach of, and you've seen this with sort of steel and aluminum, well, we want to protect domestic manufacturers of steel and aluminum for national security reasons. But it creates problems for any company that makes something out of steel and aluminum. They're now uncompetitive. And so you have to do a further ring of tariffs around those types of products. You've seen complaints, though, again, sort of along the lines of, okay, well, people who use things that are made out of steel and aluminum, people who are making chemicals and air sprays in an aerosol can. Well, if their cans come up, well, now you can just buy that spray from overseas. And so it's this constantly expanding need to protect. And that's where it gets really challenging, because then everything is expensive.
What about retaliatory?
Americans don't really like that.
Yeah. What about retaliatory tariffs? Are other countries tariffing our goods so that therefore they're not as competitive in the marketplace overseas?
It's actually been a whole lot less than I think a lot of people were expecting in this latest go around. I think China is the country that really went hardest on retaliatory tariffs. Most of the others have sat back, and I think what it really reflects is an understanding globally that these tariffs are self-destructive to your domestic markets. And so what you've seen with other countries, they say, okay, if you're charging us 20% more or 20% on our products, but you're doing the exact same thing to my neighboring competitors, you're only hurting yourself. Mm-hmm. This gets back to that, other countries' producers not having to lower their prices. So they're all still sort of equal. And there isn't really that need to retaliate, which would raise prices for their own consumers. And so it's been muted. I think that also, politically, it makes it a little easier for the tariffs to continue in the U.S. We're not seeing these retaliatory tariffs, but it's really a wise move by those countries to not hurt their own consumers.
Is there a way historically that tariffs have been used to accomplish the goals the president has wanted to accomplish with these tariffs? Or are tariffs always just not the tool to use to do what he's hoping to accomplish?
Yeah, I think it's just going to be very challenging. Like I said, there's always competing interests here. And I think the tariffs are sold as a panacea. They fix everything. And what you realize is when they're implemented, each new tariff creates a new sort of issue that maybe you didn't think about. It's similar to what you were just saying in the last segment on Iran and how these prices, they affect something that's going to happen a year from now. And you don't necessarily know what that is. But there's really very few examples of using tariffs to say we're going to rebuild the entire U.S. manufacturing industry. I mean, manufacturing employment's declining globally. It's declining in China. It's declining as a share of employment pretty much everywhere. So it's not this U.S. specific issue to solve. It's productivity. People don't want to work in a lot of these jobs. They want to automate. They want to have lower prices for things, rather than this idea of, I think the Commerce Secretary said it, having millions of Americans screwing in screws into iPhones. It's not a career aspiration. And so it's going to be challenging to use something like tariffs to convince people that's a good career path.
Right. And Dan, I'm curious, when we look at the impact of tariffs correlated directly to small businesses and small business owners, what are you hearing from the small business owners about if they're being able to stay afloat, and how are they getting through this period and this time?
I think it's just survival for most. I think in the worst case scenarios, we have heard of companies that just said, this isn't worth it. We've closed up shop. I think most of them, and especially as the court cases have proceeded and this likelihood of refunds is present, small business owners as a group are pretty optimistic set. They have to be to sort of bet on themselves and think, I can do this. And so you've got a lot of people who are playing that wait and see game, taking those steps needed, just hoping to come out the other side and sort of see the refunds, see a better environment with which to do their business. Unfortunately, we hear a lot of people, I took out a second loan on my house. I've got an extra mortgage here. Taking things like merchant cash advances, which are really high cost ways to finance the short-term pain. And these are the other things that can't really be undone. If you took out or you're paying on a credit card and you're paying a 20 or 25% rate, that money's not coming back even if you get the refund. So there's a lot of that damage that can't be undone.
Now, when you talk about damage that can be redone, my question then becomes, do you think that the implications of tariffs are going to have a real kind of restructuring of small business dynamics and where they fall within the order, essentially?
No, and I think most small businesses are not directly importing. And so the people who really understand this deeply are a pretty small share. I think everyone else gets it more in the sense of everything just feels more expensive. My costs went up. I'm not seeing a line item that says this was tariffs, but I know it. I know these costs are going up. Everything feels expensive. I think that sentiment, is part of the broader U.S. conversation right now. But you talk to people who maybe own a coffee shop, and coffee got an exemption back in November. And so coffee beans were exempted from tariffs, but they said, well, my cups are going up and, my silverware is going up and the paper products that I'm using are going up. And so they're still seeing that elsewhere, even though they're the textbook of you can get exempted for a product that's truly not available. So, even they continue to struggle.
Dan, just to remind everyone, Dan Anthony, Executive Director of We Pay the Tariffs. We've got a call on the line, but before I get to that, we had a YouTube comment come in from our YouTubers that says, tariffs really are for leveling the field of worldwide economics. They're used to keep our products competitive with countries that have very low-cost labor forces and cheap resources to undercut us. How accurate, inaccurate is that statement?
I just don't think it's accurate. Coffee is a great example. Is it an unfair advantage that some other country has sunshine and growing conditions that are great for a product that doesn't grow here? I think there's a lot of desire to say level the playing field, but we've imposed tariffs on countries that have lower tariff rates than us, and we've imposed tariffs on countries where the U.S. has a trade surplus. We sell more goods to them than they sell to us. And we've done that in the name of being reciprocal. And so, there's certainly places where they have advantages. And I think that's what trade's all about. If you can do it better than us at a lower price, there's something else that we might do better. The United States has a massive trade surplus in services. We have a lot of opportunity. We have a lot of resources here. And we're also not looking at a world where we have 10 or 15% unemployment rates. I think one of the number one complaints from businesses is that there aren't enough good workers. There aren't people in the industries that they want to do. So we've got an employment challenge here. We've got a cost of living challenge here, and to think that we're going to make everything in the U.S. is going to exacerbate both.
713-440-8870 if you want to call and join the conversation. Charles is on the line from Galleria. Charles, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I think we've all heard about how the time lag for manufacturers to create factories in the U.S. is far off into the future, and it can't be done overnight. But I don't think on any level of national, regional, or local media have I heard anyone comment on the idea that keeps rolling around in my head, which is, why would a major manufacturer invest money in creating a domestic factory that would cost millions, if not billions of dollars, and project into the future, I'm going to make this up, 2, 3, 4 years to finish out such a factory, and then have an administration that changes and changes the entire concept behind tariffs, et cetera, that would make that company say, well, now we're back to competing with global and international companies, global prices, et cetera, and we thought we were going to be able to do this domestically because we were told we needed to, and now we've got this big investment in a factory that's underwater because we're unable to compete on an international level.
Charles, thank you for your comments. Dan, your thoughts?
Yeah, the uncertainty is challenging all around, and it's not just that. It's, are you going to be able to get your permits? Or is there going to be sort of neighborhood opposition to these types of projects? Again, if you're bringing something here as a greenfield investment for the first time, is there going to be a local network of suppliers, or are you going to have to bring in those parts? So there's a number of conceptually it sounds great. Put up a tariff, we'll manufacture it here. The practical implications of that are very, very different. I remember talking to someone several years back. This wasn't about the most recent set of tariffs. And they said, does anyone want a large chemical plant next to their house? So it's this idea that even if the financing made sense, if the work made sense, are you going to draw that sort of opposition that slows this whole project down for another 5 years? And like you said, we don't know what the tariff structures will look like at that time. You don't know what it's going to be in a week, let alone sort of 10 years. And again, it's just another one of those things. It sounds good in practice. When you actually start thinking about constantly changing tariff rates, it makes it really hard to say that this is going to be a worthwhile investment.
As we wrap up this conversation, I'm curious, what exactly would you like to see happen? What's your group working toward and hoping to achieve?
So specifically on the refund side, trying to make sure that process is as seamless and easy as possible. And so not requiring specific, great details on each shipment. And it seems like the U.S. government is moving in this direction. But something that we've been really adamant about is that need for fast, full, and automatic refunds. The government knows who it took the money from. It knows how to give it back. There are challenges given the scale, but that should really be the priority. We're trying to avoid a scenario where small businesses individually or collectively have to file lawsuits to get each payment back. That would really be a nightmare. But also just the education, as we've seen the debate shift. It's not sufficient to say IEEPA tariffs went away because we've just seen them replaced by something else. So what are these broader impacts? How are they impacting companies? How are they impacting their customers to raise that education level? I've been doing this for 20 years. Most people think that I've probably done it for a year because most people have only started looking at tariffs for a year. But I used to joke that my parents didn't know what I did for probably the first 10 years of my career. Now everybody knows.
Unfortunately.
So it's that, right. It's not the scenario that you want people to learn about stuff in, but raising that education and shaping that debate going forward. So tariffs don't seem like this default overcharging another country. It's all great.
Right. Dan Anthony is the executive director of We Pay the Tariffs. Dan, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
And if you would like to hear more about manufacturing, permitting, and tariffs, you can head to my interview with Jay Timmons, the CEO and president of the National Association of Manufacturers, on our YouTube channel. But coming up, a preview of Six, the musical. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues. Houston, time is running out.
Meet Damola, songwriter, world-class violinist, and award-winning multi-genre artist. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. Visit ridemetro.org/Damola to learn more about his ride.
We need you now more than ever to help us reach 500 gifts before tomorrow night.
Give right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from the Houston Chamber Choir, presenting Eric Whitaker's The Sacred Veil, a tribute to Houston's medical community with lecture from Daisy Fancourt. Saturday, April 11th, more at houstonchamberchoir.org.
Support comes from Metro. World Cup planning includes transit improvements intended to serve Houston after the final match. Metro provides bus, rail, and paratransit service and continues mobility enhancements across the region. More at ridemetro.org/Metro Now.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Houston Parks Board, celebrating 50 years of improving the lives of Houstonians through enhancing access to parks and green space. Learn more at houstonparksboard.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Decamera, presenting the first Houston recital by pianist Yuliana Avdeeva, playing preludes by Chopin and Shostakovich, April 14th at the Wortham Center. Tickets at decamera.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
The hit Broadway musical Six blends Tudor queens with pop icons, allowing the six wives of Henry VIII to take the microphone and remix 500 years of historical heartbreak into a euphoric celebration of 21st century girl power. And this global sensation has everyone losing their heads over it. Get it?
Uh-huh.
And once again, this Tony Award-winning musical that the New York Times says totally rules is back in Houston at the Hobby Center through Sunday. Joining us now to tell us more is Kelly Denice Taylor, who inhabits the role of wife number 3, Jane Seymour. Kelly, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, Kelly, I've got to just ask, how does it feel to bring history to a modern generation? Because that's really what y'all are doing.
It's so exciting. I think because this generation understands, feminism and girl power, it just makes it so much more exciting for this generation to come see it.
Yeah, it is cool how it gives women the opportunity, these women, the opportunity to tell the story theoretically from their point of view, as opposed to so much of history being given from the male point of view, that girl empowerment element of the show really makes it stand out. And then it doesn't hurt that you guys put on a kickin' concert, because it's just like a big pop concert the whole show.
Oh, yeah. Everyone comes and they're like, where's Henry? And we're like, it's not about him. It's about us. And it's about like our stories and how we made an impact on women and history and education. Some of these women, wrote music, wrote education, wrote books for women, and we never hear their sides of the story. So this is their opportunity to really tell who they are and also how their time with Henry went in a comedic way, in a fun way.
Yeah, it is very uplifting, very fun, even considering it deals with a lot of pretty dark subjects, beheadings and such.
Yeah.
But it still has a joy throughout the entire evening. I'm curious, since they are still historic characters and a lot of what's fed through it are true facts about their lives. Yeah. How much prep did you do? How much more do you know about Jane Seymour today than you did when you got the role?
So much more. And I'm actually learning more every day. Like yesterday, I just learned that she was 28 when she passed away. I had no idea. But like we do so much research when we're joining the cast. They send us books, and we watch the Tudors, and even in rehearsal we watch a Beyonce concert just to understand the idea of how they want us to portray them on stage, although we've just seen these movies and these books about how they were in the past. So it's really, really fun. It's a great process to get to learn about the show.
I read somewhere that they style each of the six wives after particular pop icons, not direct imitations, but kind of to lift up. So who are you?
We call them Queenspirations.
Okay, who's your Queenspiration?
So my Queenspiration is Adele and Sia. She really, Jane Seymour really is the emotional anchor of the show. She has this beautiful ballad that just pours her heart out and talks about, like, although she didn't have it the worst with Henry, she still had, like, she still is entitled to her experience with Henry. And she was in love with him, and she was the only wife to bear a son for him. So she has a very unique history with Henry that the others didn't, because they were beheaded and so many different things happened to them that were actually more brutal. So she tells her side of the story in an emotional way that really brings the audience into like a stillness in the middle of the show. That's really lovely.
So, Kelly, then how do you balance kind of this darker, these stories that are very historical, people know them, and they're really heavy, with kind of this light, poppy, interesting, modern take?
Well, the writing is fantastic. The book is fantastic. They do such a good job of not taking it too far in either direction so that people can still keep up emotionally. Like, we don't want people to be spinning back and forth. I think at the beginning of the show, that starts off really strong with us giving a clear layout of how the show is going to go, so that people know that we're not going to dive too deep into one thing or the other. We really just are here to have fun and celebrate.
Yeah, you're not in traditional corsets and
we're not really in court, right? Like, I think the stage design is really cool, and it makes you think like, oh, we're in court, we're all about to vote, we all are going to get a say in this. And at the end, we're like, wait a minute, none of us had a say, but we do get a say now, and we get to just decide that we don't really care that much, and we can just celebrate who we were as women.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
A lot of people make the mistake of thinking this is a jukebox musical because of the emphasis on these pop icons and Queenspirations you're talking about. But this is an original musical.
Yes, it's an original musical, and it was actually written as a college project, which I think it makes a lot of sense when you come and see the show. It was written as a college project that turned into a musical, that turned into this like grand Broadway production that it is today. But it starts with really honest roots, and it talks about like, being pretty historically accurate. So we don't, we don't stray too far off in any direction, but it is a really, really fun time. And the music is pop, it's rock, it's R&B, it's inspired in so many different directions that really anyone can enjoy it.
And I don't know how much you can address of the unique history of the productions of this show, but on Broadway it had a very difficult production and yet came out on top.
Yes, yeah, it's been so many places now. I mean, I've been on this tour alone for 4.5 years, and I've been everywhere. I've not been to Houston yet, but I've been everywhere else. And I even performed with the Broadway company for a moment. It was on cruise ships for a long time. So it's had its own history within the US alone, because it started in the UK,
Right. Well, also, and if I'm not mistaken, so it opened on Broadway, but then COVID shut it down. And a lot of shows didn't come back. But you guys seemed to build a following during COVID and allowed it that when it came back.
Social media and TikTok and everything, because the costumes are so fantastic, the music is so fun, and it's also short and quippy, it's really easy to pick up on social media and for the younger generation to just kind of want to style themselves after it. Like, after every single show, we get people dressed up as Tudor queens and with crowns on. And it's really cool because they've been doing that for years since the show, started in the US. They've been on that train with us. So it closed for a long time. I like to say physically, but online it really took off.
Well, Kelly, you finally made it to Houston. You made it.
Yeah.
Kelly, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston. Kelly Denice Taylor plays Jane Seymour in the national tour of the Broadway hit Six, currently at the Hobby Center through Sunday. For more information, visit broadway@thehobbycenter.com. And thanks for having us. Thanks for being here. Coming up, we're going to discuss today's top headlines. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
On the next Fresh Air, author and actress Annabelle Gurwitch went to an urgent care clinic for a COVID test in 2020 and got a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. She decided to face her terminal illness by being a, quote, cancer slacker, embracing a motto of no runs, no ribbons, no religion. Her new memoir is called The End of My Life is Killing Me. Join us.
You can hear it tonight at 8 o'clock.
Support comes from the Shepherd School of Music at Rice University, presenting Verdi's final comedic opera, Falstaff, in Brockman Hall for Opera with the Shepherd Chamber Orchestra, April 17th, 19th, and 21st. Tickets at rice.edu.
For this afternoon, sunny, the high getting up to 80 at 74. Your NPR station, KUHF Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, Houston City Council will vote on a proposed ordinance that would regulate cooperation between Houston police officers and ICE. We'll discuss this and more of the top headlines of the day. I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
And I'm Ernie Manous. We'll also talk to the executive director of the Galveston-Houston Immigrant Representation Project, who will tell us about an upcoming fundraising event to support their mission.
Plus, we'll also learn all about the area nonprofit Camp for All and how they're creating memorable experiences for children and adults with challenging illnesses, disabilities, and special needs.
Also, we want to hear from you, so give us a call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And remember, you can watch us live on YouTube just by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. President Trump says any country supplying military weapons to Iran will face a 50% tariff. This after Trump agreed to a 2-week ceasefire with Iran as both countries try to negotiate an end to the war. NPR's Deepa Shivaram has more.
Trump says many of the 15 points in the U.S. plan for Iran have been agreed to, including no enrichment of uranium in Iran. But Iran says otherwise and previously put forth its own 10-point proposal. In his initial social media posts on the short-term ceasefire, Trump said Iran's plan is a workable basis on which to negotiate. In a post since then, he also writes that the U.S. and Iran will discuss sanctions and tariff relief. Pakistan helped facilitate the 2-week ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran and invited both parties to Islamabad later this week to finalize negotiations. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said there are ongoing discussions about the talks, but nothing has been finalized. Deepa Shivaram, NPR News.
Farmers in the heartland are hoping the ceasefire in Iran will hold and the Strait of Hormuz will open, but many also don't expect fuel or fertilizer prices to go down anytime soon. NPR's Kirk Sigler has more from North Dakota.
Farmers were already dealing with high equipment and fertilizer costs due to inflation and President Trump's latest trade war, and the war in Iran has driven up those costs even more. Justin Sherlock grows corn and soybeans.
We really need this to be resolved soon, and for the oil and energy markets to try and stabilize if we can.
Sherlock is going into his 4th straight year in the red. The farmers here still holding on are only surviving because land prices are so high, and that's collateral to the banks.
We're at a point where we're literally betting the farm to try and keep going one more year right now.
Farmers hope the war and geopolitics don't get in the way with ongoing trade negotiations with China, traditionally North Dakota's largest buyer of soybeans. Kirk Sigler, NPR News, Fargo.
The Texas Board of Education is considering a new social studies curriculum for grades K through 12 that led to protests outside the board meeting yesterday. Greta Diaz-Gonzalez Vasquez with member station KUT has more.
The changes to the curriculum are based on a new framework that emphasizes Texas and U.S. history and de-emphasizes world history. Critics say its Western and Christian approach limits students' understanding of the world. Adrian Reyna, a public school teacher from San Antonio, says the curriculum is focused on Texas and American exceptionalism,
which denies our students and our community the opportunity to learn of some of the things that perhaps were not our shining moments, but were also critical to help us learn some lessons about how to better deal with some of the problems that we face as a community or as a country.
The board is set to take a final vote in June. I'm Greta Diaz-Gonzalez-Vázquez in Austin.
You're listening to NPR News in Washington.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. Environmental activists in Galveston have joined a lawsuit against the Trump administration for its decision to exempt the oil and gas industry in the Gulf from following requirements under the Endangered Species Act. News 88.7's Juliana Washburn reports.
A committee of Trump administration officials voted unanimously on the exemption last week. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth triggered the vote, citing national security reasons. Joni Steinhaus is with the Turtle Island Restoration Network in Galveston, which joined other environmental groups in the lawsuit. She says the exemption would leave a number of Gulf species and ecosystems unprotected and vulnerable to extinction.
To think that we can, because of actions of this committee, that we can see species go extinct in our lifetime, it's truly unbelievable and devastating to me.
Steinhaus says her group will continue to fight for legislative action to put the protections back in place. A spokesperson with the American Petroleum Institute says there needs to be a balance between meeting a growing energy demand and protecting wildlife. From the Galveston County Bureau, I'm Juliana Washburn, News 88.7.
The Texas Rangers have joined the investigation into complaints of neglect against the Christian girls' summer camp, Camp Mystic. 25 young campers and 2 counselors died when floodwaters surged through the camp on July 4th last year. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick says the Department of State Health Services has received hundreds of requests not to renew the camp's license this year. NASA leaders are already calling the Artemis II mission a success, though they've now got their eyes on getting the crew home. The 4 astronauts on the mission will spend the next 2 days flying back to Earth with a splashdown scheduled for Friday evening. NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman says the issues on the mission have been trivial.
We're talking about, water access valves and cabin temperature and even plumbing issues for that matter, for all the things that we could have been potentially talking about prior to the mission underway.
The astronauts are scheduled to hold a press conference from space later this evening. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, investing in creative thinkers and problem solvers who help people, communities, and the planet flourish. More information is available at hewlett.org.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now your hosts for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
Welcome back to the second hour of Hello Houston. We want to thank you for joining us, whether you're tuning in on 88.7 or you're a part of our YouTubers. We want to thank you for being here.
Our YouTubers are chatting away in the group. Remember, we all respect each other's different points of view. It's a great place to share your opinions, but, respect each other.
Yeah.
That's us. That's exactly what we say to people that call in, too. When you call into the show, we want to hear from everyone, all points of view. All we ask is that you do it in a respectful manner, and we will entertain your comments right here on the show. If you have something to say or want to join in, 713-440-8870, or as you heard a moment ago, you can email us talk@hellohouston.org. How's the weather out there, Celeste?
Well, I think it's beautiful. We've had quite a few comments saying that it's a beautiful day in Houston, and quite a few of our YouTubers are having a wonderful Wednesday. So
partly cloudy, high of 80, low of 62.
Which is perfect to me.
Sounds good to me, too.
That sounds really nice.
It does, as it leads into my Easter weekend.
Yes, Ernie. So
I think we're
going to
have a clear
that.
Easter week. You folks got a rainy Easter weekend. I think we're going to get a clear one. But it wasn't as bad as it's. There was that point on Saturday night where it was pretty rough for a little bit there. Very heavy downpour. But overall,
it was
you
nice.
guys did an Easter egg hunt. If I
We
saw
did
your
our
pictures.
yes, we did an Easter egg hunt on Sunday. We went to church, and it was nice because it was overcast, but it wasn't too chilly.
Yeah.
And so it was nice to be outside. And I love a good southern spring. You know, here in Houston, we just have this like spring in Texas. I think is the best time.
I don't know if you'll take this as a compliment or an insult.
I sure hope so.
But you often feel to me a northern girl than a southern girl. And I often forget you grew up South Texas even.
Yeah, I grew up in South Texas. You know, it's interesting because my mom is from Houston originally, and my dad, I've said it before, was born and raised in Panama, but he came to school here. And yeah, I know what you mean.
You're cosmopolitan.
A little bit more. Are you telling me you don't think I'm a Southern belle, Ernie?
Well, I think there are moments when you are. You're more of a steel magnolia. Anyway, we have got a full show this hour for you as well. We're going to be taking a look at immigration from a couple of different perspectives.
Yeah.
We've got a new news story coming in that Celeste is going to share with you in just a minute. And then we're going to talk with folks from the Galveston-Houston Immigrant Representation Project, which works for legal aid for folks in situations where they need it. We'll be talking to them. And then we're going to wrap up the show with Camp for All, a wonderful organization that celebrates uniqueness and encourages people's abilities as opposed to looking at things from a negative point of view and the things people don't have. It's to celebrate what we do have.
And I think that's really exciting. They have an event coming up where people will propel for charity to raise funds to send students to the camp, where they're going to propel off of a 30-story building and walk down. So we're going to hear about that. Yeah, for sure. That's coming up.
We've talked about this a little bit before. I jumped out of an airplane once. Skydived, I guess is the correct way. I didn't just jump out of an airplane. And I will tell you, leading up to it, it wasn't what I was planning to do. Long story there. I ended up doing it in the moment. It was, wow, this is crazy. Wow, this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. After the fact, when I realized what I had done, I will never do it again.
Okay, well, Ernie, we have time. I'd like you just to really quickly explain to us, long story, make it a short story. How are you not supposed to actually jump out of a plane?
I was talking to someone who's big into skydiving.
Okay.
It was on radio, Dan Gallo. And it was Chuck Akers with Dan Gallo. And he was saying he's a big skydiver. And we were talking, and he was like, you should go skydiving sometime. And I said, you know what really I would do is those wind towers that they have where you can kind of like fake skydive. Now that I would do. And he was like, oh, it would be a lot of fun. You really should do it. And I was like, yeah, I will do it. Well, both of us got confused what we were talking about. So he set it up for me to go skydiving. So I get a phone call from him. He said, okay, how about on Saturday we go? I was like, okay, cool. Where are we going? And he said, so-and-so airfield. And I'm like, airfield? What are you talking about? He said, yeah, it's all set up. We'll see you then. And he hung up, and I turned to a friend of mine and said, I think we're actually jumping out of planes. I thought we were just going to go to the wind tunnel. And then I couldn't admit I didn't know, you know me, so I went.
Ernie.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yes. I would have never agreed.
I know. Okay, it does feel very... Okay, so then you actually did it, and you would not do it again. You didn't feel that exhilarating rush where you're like, I've got to do that. The adrenaline kicked in.
It was cool. No, what happened was it was cool. We did it. It was awesome to see, to be floating through air, going through a cloud, all of that stuff. 2 days later, I was back in my office, and I have windows that look out, and I was looking out at the sky, and I saw the clouds up in the sky, and then I stopped, and I thought, what they'll tell you is you're twice as high as where the clouds are. So the clouds are at the midway point, and then you go twice as high as that to jump out. And I was like, oh, my God, I jumped out of a perfectly fine airplane and just trusted that, and I got a panic attack. And that's when I decided I will never do this again. Now everyone's like, no, Ernie, it's not. It's safe. It's very safe. You do hear of the rare accident, but out of the number of people that do that, it's so minor. It's safer than driving your car. But you know what? When I'm on the ground, I feel safer, period.
Yeah. I would love to hear I would like to hear your skydiving experience, 713-440-8870. I'm interested in
As
hearing
we
others.
wait to hear that, let's get into the headlines of the day. Celeste, take it away.
Houston City Council has approved a new ordinance limiting cooperation between police and federal immigration authorities. In a 12-5 vote, council members backed a measure preventing officers from detaining people over civil immigration warrants or extending traffic stops. The policy also requires regular reporting from the mayor's office. Supporters call it a step toward reducing local involvement with ICE. And now is the time to join us on Hello Houston. Do you support Houston limiting police cooperation with ICE, or do you think it goes too far? Will it help or hurt immigration efforts? You can call us at 713-440-8870.
Someone who is with us right now was there as this was all coming down. It was Dominic Anthony Walsh, reporter with Houston Public Media. Dominic, welcome to the program.
Hey, Ernie. Hey, Celeste.
Okay, help me through this. Walk me through this. At first blush, I would have thought the mayor was opposed to it, but I was wrong.
Well, this is a first-of-its-kind challenge to one of Mayor John Whitmire's policies. Just last month, him and leadership from HPD announced that there would be a 30-minute wait for ICE. So when officers encounter a civil immigration warrant out in the field, ICE then has 30 minutes to respond. As we heard, what this ordinance did, or what it will do, is officers can no longer wait at all. They must notify ICE, but then they have to let the person go once the traffic stop has concluded. And so Whitmire did vote in favor of the change. He really framed it as simply codifying HPD's existing practices. There's some back and forth in the weeds complexity with the city legal in terms of what the department's actual policy is. But yes, he supported the change. He said it simply codifies what HPD already does, even though there's that 30-minute wait and there is some tension with what this new policy is.
So then I'm curious, Dominic, what prompted the measure if this is already essentially what HPD does, and why is it coming up now?
Yeah, so there were a series of Houston Chronicle reports over the past year that revealed a ramp up in coordination between HPD and ICE. Responding to that coverage, Houston Police Chief Noe Diaz confirmed officers turned over 85 people to ICE last year. And so over the course of the year, community activists have just been repeatedly calling for change. And so at that press conference in March, when HPD announced this 30-minute wait policy in response to all of that reporting and all of the community pushback, that's when Councilmember Alejandra Salinas, along with Abby Kamen and Edward Pollard, announced this initiative to completely prohibit officers from waiting for ICE at all. So that's really the background here.
Mm-hmm. I guess my question overall, and help me through this, is, and where I'm wrong, please correct me, that when we look at the situation here in Houston, we have been saved a lot of what we've seen in other cities with the ramp-ups and the chasings and all of that of people who are undocumented or wrongly characterized as undocumented, that we've had a very more I don't know what the correct wording is, a less combative situation here. Am I seeing the situation wrong? Are things much worse than we think? Was there need for this alteration in our plan?
ICE has been active in the Houston area. There's no doubt about that. What we haven't seen is the kind of, ramped up spectacle of enforcement that we saw in, I think, most notably Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. And that's actually what Whitmire pointed to. He over the past year, when people were calling for this type of change, he said that he was afraid that something like Minneapolis would happen to Houston. So for sure, ICE is conducting operations and enforcement in the Houston area. HPD has coordinated with them on some of that. And one of the fears from Mayor Whitmire was any sort of change would draw, attention and scrutiny and a potential crackdown on Houston, which we have not seen, unlike places like Minneapolis.
How much of that, and I don't know how much you've dug into this story, has been with the leadership at the top of ICE and with Holman coming in? Has that made some of the change?
So one thing that ICE did last year is they put forward more than 700,000 administrative warrants. Now, these administrative warrants are really what's at issue here. These are civil immigration warrants, not signed by a judge. They are issued by ICE itself. And so officers are encountering more of these types of warrants when they're out in the field. And, when you chat with legal experts, there's all sorts of contention over what officers can and cannot do and what they should do when they encounter an administrative warrant out in the field, because it's not a criminal warrant signed by a judge. There are questions about whether or not they can actually detain people, if they should detain people. And so in terms of what ICE has done, that change is one of the things that has, kind of complicated the picture here in Houston.
Dominic, are there limits under Texas law that the city still has to follow?
Yes, one of the big limits under state law is Senate Bill SB 4, passed sometime in the past few years. I believe it was 2023. And this state law curtails the ability of cities and counties, their ability to actually, limit coordination with ICE. It says that they cannot require their police departments to not collaborate with ICE. And so there was some legal back and forth over this ordinance itself. An earlier version of the ordinance would have given officers discretion about whether or not to contact ICE. That would have brought the city in line with Dallas, where officers have discretion. Instead, the ordinance was revised after pushback from the city's legal department. And so officers must continue to contact ICE. And that's really about, these concerns about the state law that, really prohibits cities and counties from, curtailing collaboration with ICE. So, yeah, state law is a big factor here.
You were talking about the warrants. Would it make a difference if they were judicial signed by a judge warrants as opposed to what they are using?
So the big difference would be a criminal warrant signed by a judge. In that case, officers would be expected to hold people. But again, the legal complexity is really around the civil warrant itself, the administrative warrant. There's not really a settled, legal picture on what is and is not allowed with that type of warrant. And the concern with holding someone because of that warrant is, it could potentially violate the Fourth Amendment, which prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures. But when you talk to legal experts, a lot of these questions have not yet been settled, and it would take, a court decision to really clarify the picture.
Dominic, folks can find out more of your reporting by going to houstonpublicmedia.org or listening to the station as you continue to report on this. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And that was Houston Public Media reporter Dominic Anthony Walsh.
Interesting development while we were on the air doing the show, bringing it to you as it happens. Remember, we're always interested in what you have to think, what you have to say, I should say. 713-440-8870. Patrick is on the line from Cyprus. Patrick, what's on your mind?
Well, my thought was if we have police not cooperating with other agencies, for example, the FBI, that would be a problem. If we have police not cooperating with firemen, that would be a problem. So why would we not have police cooperating with ICE and vice versa? I think the same discretion that a policeman has to pull you over for speeding or not, we don't want to take away their discretion for common sense, but at the same time, there's an obligation to have inter-office cooperation. I remember the Twin Towers. So-and-so, they had information on the bad guys in one department but didn't communicate it to the other department. So it just seems crazy to not cooperate with ICE.
Yeah, I'm not 100% briefed on all of this, and I don't feel like it's definitely in my bailiwick. But from my understanding, it's not so much about sharing the information. It's about the detention that follows. So the officers still would report to ICE that they have encountered this individual, but they would not detain them for a period of time for ICE to get there, I think is where the line is being drawn. Your reaction to that?
Well, let's say there's something going on, and I see a policeman, and he's doing what's obviously some variation of trying to do crowd control. And I see somebody, a group of, we'll just say, bystanders doing nothing, I would say that's bad judgment.
Yeah.
You know?
Patrick, thank you for calling in and joining in the conversation.
Yeah, I think that some people would say that this is going to essentially tie the hands of police when they're looking at immigration and how they are working with other agencies. But again, we appreciate everybody for joining here on Hello Houston. And coming up on Hello Houston, we're going to talk with the Executive Director of Galveston-Houston Immigrant Representation Project, Chiqui Sanchez Kennedy, about an upcoming fundraising event. This is News 88.7.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
At HoustonMatters.org.
Right now, this station runs on commitment, and that commitment starts with you. This station shows up every day with reliable, unbiased news. Help us keep showing up for you right now. HoustonPublicMedia.org/donate.
Houston Public Media, in partnership with Texas Southern University, brings to you The Vibe, R&B, hip-hop, and neo-soul, music that resonates with all ages. The Vibe on 88.7 HD3 and on the Houston Public Media app.
Houston Public Media presents the Moth Story Slam, April 14th at Lambert Hall. Doors open at 7 p.m. The theme of the night is sus, stories about deception or suspicion. Tickets at houstonpublicmedia.org/themoth.
Support comes from Pearland, Texas, a community supporting innovation in business, science, healthcare, energy, and inspiring their citizens. More on innovation happening in Pearland at pearlandedc.com. Pearland. Innovation lives here.
Support comes from downtown Houston, moving forward with more people back in the office. More visitors every week and over $1 million grant dollars invested into small businesses and storefronts. More at downtownhouston.org.
Support comes from the Grand 1894 Opera House, presenting The Cat in the Hat, a live stage adaptation of the Dr. Seuss story featuring the cat, Thing 1 and Thing 2, April 18th, thegrand.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
The Galveston-Houston Immigrant Representation Project is a local nonprofit providing free legal services to immigrants across the region, including children and families facing deportation. As challenges grow around access to legal representation and family reunification, organizations like the GHIRP are stepping in to support some of the most vulnerable members of the community. Joining us today is Chiqui Sanchez Kennedy, the Executive Director of Galveston-Houston Immigrant Representation Project, to talk about their work in the upcoming spring fundraiser, bringing the community together in support of this mission. Chiqui, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, very, very newsful day when it comes to this topic.
That's right.
If you want to join the conversation, please give us a call at 713-440-8870. My first reaction to all of this is having dealt with someone who was low income and having a problem with immigration policy. The legal services that were out there that were available had humongous wait times. People couldn't get processed. They couldn't get help. They would call you back in 6, 8, 10 weeks. Where are we at in this situation? And when it comes to your organization, how quickly can you connect with the people in need?
Yep. So that has been a problem for as long as I've been a lawyer, right? The free legal services available to the community often don't meet the needs of the community. So that is absolutely correct. But there is a it's difficult to access free legal services. At GIRP, we provide comprehensive legal services to immigrants in the community. And if you cannot get an immediate consultation, for example, an assessment of your case, an individual confidential assessment of your case, you can always come to our walk-in services. So monthly, we provide walk-in services, and without having to register or have an appointment, if you show up and on the right day and time, we can we provide a Know Your Rights presentation explaining the legal process and all the rights that immigrants have in our community. And then we provide a free consultation where we can assess your case one-on-one. So the answer to your question is you never have to go 6 to 8 weeks, I think you said, to access our services. You can always come in once a month without an appointment.
And I guess my bigger point in all of that is there is a huge need for this service. That's why there are these wait times. That's why these services are so overwhelmed, because there's so much need.
There is so much need. So in our monthly walk-in services, we open our doors at 8:30, but when I walk in to the office building, there's been a line since 6 o'clock in the morning, and that line is growing. The need is growing throughout the community because of intensified ICE enforcement in Houston, and people are afraid, right? Mm-hmm. So the walk-in services start with a Know Your Rights presentation, and that right there is something that empowers individuals to understand where they can go, what are next steps, and what rights they have in a world that's super uncertain right now.
Right.
You know, Chiqui, I'm curious, can you share a story that really captures why this work matters?
Sure. I'm thinking through the many stories, but we recently worked with a client that I think really captures a lot of the changes that are going on in our community and in our state and nationally. So I represent a father who is from Venezuela. He had TPS status in 2023, which is a protection from deportation. And his children followed and came to the United States seeking safety a couple years later, and he immediately came forward for his children. His children were unaccompanied minors when they came to the United States, and so as unaccompanied minors, they went to a detention facility. In Houston, we have several detention facilities, and GERP serves 3 of the detention facilities. And he came forward for his children immediately, seeking to reunify with them. And in the process, he cooperated with every single request, every document request, every interview request. He opened up his home to immigration officials twice, who reviewed the home to make sure he was an adequate sponsor. And ultimately, he was recommended to receive his children. 3 months later, with no action on that case and on that reunification, he received a phone call from ICE saying, "Can you come down to our office? We would like to just do one last step, right, to get your kids out of detention." And he did go. He said, "I'm going to go. I have to go." And at that point, his status expired. His temporary status expired. And so when he went, he was immediately detained. And that was almost 12 months after his kids had been detained in a facility. So now the children have been detained over 14 months, and he is still not capable of receiving his children and reunifying with his kids so that he can take care of them. So we filed a very time and resource intensive litigation in federal court to get him released from detention, and he's ultimately been released very recently, but has to start that process all over to get his kids out. And so I think this story highlights several issues that are going on, right? I think we see a lot of family separation. This is continued family separation. People don't realize that here in Houston, I think one of the biggest things that people comment on is other places, other cities where they're seeing detentions and ICE enforcement. It's happening right here in our community. And we are, detaining children right here in our community. And for very lengthy stays, these detention facilities are not meant for long-term stay. And it's impacting mental health of adults and children, and we're seeing a lot of issues as a result.
So often when we talk about this, like what you were just talking about, we talk on case-by-case basis. I'm curious if you know of, or if it's even possible at the highest levels, at the top of the administrative pyramid in all of this, are lawyers having positive effect on talking with administration folks about this can't happen because of this. We need to reform that. There's ways to work through this that aren't the way it's being combated down on the ground level. Or is the only way for change to happen on these individual cases as they come up?
I think that the changes we are seeing are designed to impact families the way they are impacting families. So I don't know what the advocacy looks like at those top levels. I'm not involved in that advocacy, and I sure would hope that they would respond to stories like this. These are human beings, these are families, these are children, and you would hope that that at the top level people would say, gosh, this seems inhumane.
Yeah.
However, I don't know what those conversations have looked like or what the result has been. I do know that coming together as a community, having lawyers funded, right? Funding is such a sensitive topic right now. Lots of funding is vulnerable and being taken away, and legal services are, and legal programs are going away. And so the community is where the power is right now. If we come together as a community, if the public comes together, if legal services continue challenging these unlawful practices, these policies, and continue holding the government accountable, these stories, these families will succeed.
Right.
Because what we're seeing is when we do go into federal court, for example, and challenging certain unlawful actions that violate constitutional rights, we're having success, right? It just takes a lot of time and resources. And right now is a time where our resources are quite limited, and they are there's just not enough of us, like we started at the top.
And, you know, Chiqui, when we talk about resources, oftentimes we hear there's a lack of access to legal services for the most vulnerable communities. What does that look like on the ground right here in Houston for you?
So there are many programs that provided free legal services. And I'll give one example because I think it's so important. GERP actually did not have this program, but we relied on it. Houston has 4 detention facilities.
Right.
And on any given day, they can house 4,000 people. There was a program with bipartisan support that has existed for over 20 years that every newly arriving individual who was detained in those facilities received basic legal information and assistance to go through the immigration process without an attorney, pro se. That program is one of the many government-funded programs that has been cut. So that means that individuals who are detained and have very little access to legal services on the outside or access to funding to hire a private attorney no longer have basic information and the tools that they need to get through this incredibly complex system by themselves. There are other government-funded programs who have either been cut already. We last year experienced an overnight defunding of our legal services for unaccompanied children, which is the largest program we have in our organization. Fortunately, we joined litigation to restore that funding, and that funding has been restored for now. But there's constant uncertainty as to the availability of these funds and the program services that we provide with these funds.
We're also familiar with hearing the statement, you know, you're entitled to a lawyer. If you don't have one, a lawyer will be permitted for or assigned for you, or however that word goes exactly. Immigrants facing deportation don't have that same guarantee, correct?
That's correct. They have the right to have a lawyer, of course, but not one at the government's expense. So that means that they can obtain their own attorney. They can find whoever they want to represent them and bring them into court. But if they don't have a lawyer, then they must go forward by themselves. And I just want to paint that picture and stop there for a minute, because that is an adversarial system with a judge and an ICE attorney opposing the non-citizen. No matter if they're 2, 5, 12, 25, 85, they don't have the right to a free lawyer. And so they're tasked with defending themselves against deportation, proving their case, filing legal documents and legal arguments in English without the assistance of a lawyer. So a lawyer is a lifeline to accessing protection here in the United States.
And the other part of that, too, that's so disturbing, this whole situation, when you look at this situation, it's very hard. And I'm not particularly talking about people who are here undocumented, but talking about people who are here that are in the process of doing things the proper way in this particular question. And those folks are being plucked out and sent out. And yet they are following the laws, the rules, what we have established in this nation as a way to be here legally. I'm very concerned how that can be allowed.
Right. There are many things that are happening, and particularly those who are pending applications and lawful status. We have a client who obtained lawful status in 2019, protection from his home country, and he was picked up by ICE and unlawfully deported despite a court order protecting him from that deportation. And these are instances that are not one-off situations.
Let me interrupt here and just ask, how is that legally permissible?
Well, it's our opinion that it is not legally permissible. There are technicalities that made it blurry. However, we've gone into district court to challenge that, and the court is issuing an order to bring him back because they also are not confident that that was a legal removal. And so some actions are either on their face illegal, and we challenge those in court, but you have to have a lawyer that is immediately on it and able to stop everything and go in and seek an emergency order to stop that unlawful behavior. And many people don't have that luxury.
Right.
So that is obviously very concerning. And some things may seem like they are in line with current policies, but they're workarounds to an ultimately unlawful act. And that's what we had here in this case that I just mentioned.
And I'm just curious, when we look at this case specifically, or cases like this where you are hitting an intersection of it's happening, we understand it's unlawful, but it is still happening. Who is paying for the plane ticket to send this person back? What is that process? Where does that fund, it costs money to be moving these people around and then coming back for them. Where do those funds come from?
I am not sure where those funds originate. I do know that our clients are not paying for those transfers and flights, and they are not in agreement with the actions and have voice that opinion when officers are transferring them or trying to remove them.
Right. And something that we continue to hear is the need. The need is so great. And so, Chiqui, how does GURP prioritize cases when you're looking at so many in a high volume?
So we do have to be creative. When we saw what was coming last November, we knew that this was going to be a situation where there were far more community members seeking our services than we had capacity to serve. So we wanted to think of new and different ways to serve people, as many people as possible, while still prioritizing complex litigation and removal defense in court. So there's a lot of ways that we prioritize. We prioritize group activities, like I just mentioned, the Know Your Rights presentations and consultations, because at the very least, if you have that information, a person or a family is empowered to take the next steps, even if they can't do it with us representing them. We go to court, and we used to, it just recently stopped, provide like an attorney of the day type limited legal service. And then we prioritize the most vulnerable individuals in our community, those who are in crisis, those who are at risk of imminent deportation or who have suffered violence here in this country or are fleeing persecution in their home country.
And just to clarify, outside of all the political posturing and all that in here, what you folks are doing is following the letter of the law. You are using established law and understanding of law and policy to say things that are happening are not falling within what we as a people have already agreed upon. Is that a way to sum it up?
Yes, but yes, we are arguing that our client, mostly what we're doing is giving our clients access to those protective forms of relief. So we are affirmatively seeking that protection. And that could be us trying to prove that, for example, they're eligible for asylum in court, that they have been persecuted in the past and they need protection here in the United States. But we are exclusively relying on well-established law to argue and advocate for our clients.
We had somebody that commented on YouTube, which I thought was a great idea. Wonder if we could make a legal AI agent to file these emergency orders and everyone could just have an app.
That is a very great idea, and that is not the first time I've heard that idea, although thank you for whoever said that for thinking creatively. I think this is an example of our community needing to come together to think creatively and expand legal services in a way that has never been expanded with the same or limited amount of resources.
So before we run out of time, of course, let's move to a more positive thing, coming together for a good cause. Tell me about your spring festival fundraiser.
Well, this is really exciting because we are not only having our spring festival fundraiser, which we have every year at Dan Electro's. It's on April 25th, but it also marks our 5th year anniversary of being in existence. So in 2020, I have to tell the story. Liz, Vanessa, and I were 3 lawyers, and we set out to create an organization that provided immigration legal services. We wanted to be nimble, we wanted to be independent, and focused exclusively on protecting immigrant rights and access to due process. And so what started around my dining room table in my house with the 3 of us unpaid has turned into this super powerhouse immigration legal services organization. We now have 43 staff, half of which are attorneys. We have legal assistants, social workers, and administrative staff who help us carry out our mission every day. And so this festival is an opportunity to celebrate 5 years of awesome advocacy and bring the community together for awareness and to help us support our services. We are not going to shy away from the fact that our funding is vulnerable. We need the community support, and we hope to raise funds to continue the great work that we're doing.
So folks know, I guess your website is GHIRP.org.
That's correct.
I wanted to spell it instead of saying
GIRP.
it because you meant GIRP. How do you spell GIRP?
I know. That is a common response that we get, but it is GIRP, or the Galveston-Houston Immigrant Representation Project. Yeah.
Wonderful work.
Chiqui Sanchez Kennedy is the executive director of the Galveston-Houston Immigration Representation Project. Again, Chiqui, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to talk to you.
Coming up, Camp For All. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
Call 888-909-0887.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from CertaPro Painters, offering residential and commercial painting services, from color consultations to full project management, estimates and more at CertaPro.com. Support comes from Theater Under the Stars, presenting Beautiful, the Carole King story. Feel the earth move as you sing along to the story of the legendary songstress. On stage at the Hobby Center May 19th through 31st. Tickets available at tuts.org.
Support comes from Metro. World Cup planning includes transit improvements intended to serve Houston after the final match. Metro provides bus, rail, and paratransit service and continues mobility enhancements across the region. More at ridemetro.org/Metro Now.
Support comes from NAMI Walks Greater Houston, community walks supporting mental health education and support services through the National Alliance on Mental Illness. 2026 NAMI Walks Greater Houston. More at namiwalks.org/Greater Houston. Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from St. Arnold Brewing Company, a place for corporate events on tap. Meeting rooms, AV equipment, and full catering available. More at StArnold.com. Support comes from Amazing Place, an area resource for navigating dementia and nurturing brain health. Its day program helps adults with mild to moderate dementia engage with others and rediscover a sense of purpose. Details at amazingplacehouston.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous and Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
Camp for All transforms the world for children and adults with challenging illnesses, disabilities, or special needs by focusing on what they can do instead of what they can't do in a genuinely unique, barrier-free camp environment. And on April 11th, Camp for All will host its annual Over the Edge event where thrill seekers will rappel down a 31-story building. Ernie,
I'm already nervous.
And joining us now to tell us more is the Camp for All COO, Brian Frazier, Faith Malton, the one-arm wonder, and Zack Ruhl. Welcome to Hello Houston.
Thanks for having us.
It's a full house.
Yeah, if you want to join in the conversation, 713-440-8870. Okay, we were talking in the open of this hour about me skydiving, whatever it's called. I freaked out on that already. Rappelling down a 31-story building. Whose idea was this, and who's actually excited about doing it?
And which one of you is doing it?
All three of us.
Yes.
Oh, my
all
Lord.
three. Okay.
All right, I'm out.
Yeah, so we partner with an organization called Over the Edge who will set all of this up and make sure that it's safe and that we don't fall or get hurt, and but you still have to do it. You still have to get to the top and lean backwards and go over the edge.
Oh, my Lord.
Wow. Oh, my gosh.
So have any of you done this before?
I have actually twice for Camp for All, but it's been a couple of years. The first time was in 2019, and then I think again in 2020 maybe, or 2021. But I'm thrilled to be back. It's going to be a great time.
We were saying earlier, and I was saying about jumping out of that plane, and I said, in the moment of doing it, the exhilaration and all that, but when you get back on the ground, you stop and think what you did. And I was like, I'm never doing this again. But now this is your third time. So there was something you got out of this that was fun. I don't know what it would have been.
I've also done skydiving before as well, and
Okay.
I think both experiences give you a lot of perspective on your life, and definitely was a pick-me-up for the rest of the week, that's for sure. And then also Camp for All is a great organization, and having grown up without an arm, it's my absolute desire for every kid who has some sort of difference to know that there are other kids living the exact same life that they are. And there's a place where they can actually test their skills and get to know how capable they actually are.
And, I have a very special little one. My niece, Fernanda, she has a limb difference. Her limb goes up to right here. And so whenever I saw the title, One Arm Wonder, I honestly got a little choked up because I thought to myself, how amazing that Faith, that you're like, yeah, and I own it, and it is me, and I am doing extremely difficult things that I'm scared of doing. Talk to me about being able to represent in such a powerful way.
Thank you. Yeah, so it was funny hearing the show use that name because I've since kind of moved away from it a little bit.
Okay.
Not for any negative reason, but just because it was my moniker for a while. I have a YouTube channel still up called One Arm Wonder, and that's 3 R's at the end because I have 3 limbs. For me, it was just about really a moniker that pointed to the depth and breadth of what it means to be alive, that disability has the opportunity to be a portal for anybody to walk through.
Right.
So that was definitely the point of the name. Yeah.
Zack, talk to me a little bit about how you see who you are in the world compared to maybe how other people see you, and your work to try and let people now stop looking at limitations, look at the positive.
Oh, man.
And you've got 6 minutes to do it.
Yeah, I've always been the guy that kind of, when somebody tells me I can't do something, I'll do anything to kind of like prove them wrong. Or I don't know if it's proving myself right or proving them wrong, really, but I do go out of my way to do so. And then, I think that's what sets me apart more than anybody. I never really take I can't with anything, honestly. when the more impossible it looks, the more I seem to like chase it or want that thrill. So maybe it's adrenaline rush. I have no idea. Maybe it's just, maybe I'm the only idiot that said yes to Faith. They're going down a 30-story building. I don't know. She called me and I was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, wait, hold on.
What did I just agree to?
It's 30 stories. Like, dang, did I say yeah? Like, yeah. So
for folks who aren't watching us on YouTube, you have a hat that says reckless wheelchairs. What makes you so reckless in your wheelchair?
I bring the reckless. They provide the wheelchairs.
Now, Brian, all of this is to raise funds for Camp For All. Talk to us about the camp and what this space means.
Well, I appreciate that. And you introduced us with the mission of the organization, and everything that you just heard from them and described is exactly what we create at camp in these barrier-free experiences. When someone with a significant illness, disability, or special need comes on campus, they realize that this camp was designed and created for them. All of our activities are connected with sidewalks that are 8 foot wide, so we can have 2 wheelchairs going side by side. You won't see a step of stairs on the campus. Everything from the beginning, even our health center, is there so that children, when they come in, and if they have to run dialysis, then it's this fun and incredible room and experience that puts them at ease. Now they get to go and do camp and take on all these challenges together with other children who are just like them, going through the same challenges, and they're making friends for life in these moments that they get to have together.
Zach, tell me a little bit about what it means personally to be able to go to an organization like this as opposed to what you see every day in the rest of the world.
It means everything. Like Brian was saying, I mean, pretty much Camp For All's mission lines up with my life's mission. I just want to pretty much pay it forward, especially to people that are like me or, similar situation as me. So if I can show just one person that, life ain't over, it is possible, get out there, get out of your head or whatever, then I've did my mission, and that kind of makes me feel fulfilled a little bit,
Is there a moment, Faith, when realization hits at some point growing up where it's no longer, I don't fit in, or is there more of a moment where it comes to you that, wait a minute, I never saw myself as different until I saw the world around me reacting to me? Where does it come? Because you said you were born with only one arm.
Yeah, so it's a little bit twofold, right? There's the realization that, oh, I'm limited, and there's the realization that people are not going to receive me in a welcoming way because I have one arm. Now, for the first one, I actually have a really good story that I don't remember personally, but my father told me it, which I think is a lovely story. So he said I was always a really happy kid, happy-go-lucky, picks me up from Montessori school one day, and I get in the car, and I'm just super deflated and quiet, and he goes, FM, what's going on? And I say, just in the most matter-of-fact, just point blank, I can't do the monkey bars. Mm-hmm. And so for him, that was a really big just, oh, this is going to be a long road. Like this is the beginning, So I guess that was Montessori school. So, I mean, you're 5, I think, maybe at that age. And I think what I love about Zach's mission and Camp For All's mission is that it adds perspective to the general public that your life, it's one life. It's not a dress rehearsal. And that anything is possible. That the biggest disability is a negative mindset. The biggest disability is certain beliefs about yourself and about what's possible. And I know Zach and I have had many conversations about this where we see so many people miss out on life because of how they think, not only about themselves, but also about others. Yeah. And sort of instead of being curious, being judgmental or conclusive.
Yeah. Zach, I apologize because I don't know your full story, but were you always with a wheelchair, or did that come to you later in life?
No, I was born like this. I was congenital amputee. Actually, I was born with a deformity that led to my amputation when I was 2 years old. And to be honest, I didn't have it's going to sound weird, but I didn't have a wheelchair until I was 25. I rode around on a skateboard. So anybody who knows me from high school, junior high, or whatever, or college even, I was on a skateboard. I rode around kind of double amputeed all through skate, and I played high school football. like
Wow.
on my not on the skateboard, on my hands. Like honestly, if you've seen Planet of the Apes, I move exactly like those guys.
Oh my God. So, Brian, here we are talking about, we're hearing these incredible stories about discovering life outside of essentially their diagnosis or their disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what Camp for All tries to do for children, but also adults. Talk to us about the age range that you all serve.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, we partner with over 60 different organizations, not only here in Houston, Austin, other rural cities, but even across the country, who come in and bring their groups to do camp. Many of them have adults. So the age range is wide. We hold family camps as well, so we can see children as young as 5 or 6 years old doing some of the program activities out there, up to you call out an age. We have it out there, but with our equine program or getting on a zip line, there really are no limits in that sense.
I'm going to cut you short here, though, just so you can, before we run out of time, retell us about Over the Edge. How can people get involved?
Yeah, so just go to our website, campforall.org, click on events, and there you're going to be able to find our page, and you can find Faith and Zack's page there too. Donate and support us that way.
Brian, Zack, and Faith, thank you all so much for joining us today on Hello Houston. And we've run out of time. That brings us to the end of our show. We did get a really nice YouTube comment from Resin saying, being newly disabled has been a struggle. Love seeing positive attitudes from this group. So we want to thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston, for listening, watching, calling, and chatting with us. We'll be back tomorrow with more conversations. This is News 88.7. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altai, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media.
The world's never really approved of the amount of power the United States has had, but it's usually